I got started in multifamily because I was looking for a way to catch up with how late I was in the game to investing. You have to treat multifamily as a business. It's not a hobby. It's not something that, you do and you could like disconnect from.
Keep your WT until your multifamily is able to cover all your expenses and more, even double what you're earning with your W2. And for that to happen, it takes time. It's not just one deal or two deals. This is another edition of Ask the Multifamily Expert, and I have with me one of my partners. We've partnered on several deals and ongoing. It's been a very fantastic experience, and we both have different backgrounds in the sense that he has a W2. I do not have a W2. He has a family and he's also doing multifamily real estate investing. Very active, not a passive investor, but he's very active on it. And we know that some of our investors or some of you are also in the same boat and you're looking for ways on how you can navigate it. Like I said previously, that this section, this period, we're discussing more about families, the economy, and how to get financial freedom, looking at the entire things I've just mentioned. So that is why we're addressing them one at a time. Next week, we'll also be concentrating on other things that have to do with how to manage a property and all that. We'll be diving into that. And we'll also be bringing in policies that are also affecting how we are managing properties recently. I'm going to show us a video on how the things that are happening in the economy are affecting the multifamily space and how we are mitigating them. So that video, just look out for it. That video will be out soon. And if you've not subscribed on our YouTube channel, like I always say, I really don't know what you're waiting for. There's a lot of content that has to do with especially what is going on in the economy, what is going on in multifamily and family, because if you know me, you know that most of the content I put out there has a lot to do with my family and all that. So it's important that you log in, you subscribe, not just subscribe, you like and you follow. On YouTube, it is BB Ofiri, and on Facebook, it's also BB Ofiri. But we have a group that is called Blue Ocean Multifamily Group, and that group is really for an enclosed set of people where we throw out nuggets and give out information on what is currently going on in the multifamily space. Before we dive into this, I would like our guest today, Brian. Most times I do not try to introduce the guest because I will not do justice to it. The guest will definitely do more justice than I will do. So I like the guests most times to always introduce themselves. So Brian, can you tell us briefly who you are and everything about you?
Okay, great. So my name is Brian Escudero. I've been in multifamily for about 3-4 years now. I do have a W2 in a large media company. I'm the head of the technical operations team there. And I got started in multifamily because I was looking for a way to catch up with how late I was in the game to investing. My wife had some health issues, and while we were dealing with that, I kind of took my eye off the ball, or maybe we just really didn't have the ability to do it. And real estate was something that I could understand. It moves at a speed that makes sense to me, and so with the experience of my W2, I wanted to get started in that. And within a few years, we're about $36 million assets under management, and we are GPs or sole owners of about 360 units in 4 different states.
And if you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A session, or you can raise your hand and we'll allow you to ask questions. So now, Brian, I would like to ask you some few questions that we got from some people. How did you start investing in multifamily while still working a full-time job? How did you start doing that?
So I took the long way to finish college. Again, I was very busy, building my career, and a lot of long hours. I mentioned my wife had some health issues, so I had to kind of start and stop school. So when I was 41, I graduated, and when I got back, it was the time to focus on the next thing. Right? It wasn't something that was no pie in the sky. The ocean didn't part, and I was given this message. But I listened to a podcast on Bigger Pockets, and there was a book that they talked about called Long Distance Real Estate Investing. And so I live in South Florida, where real estate is very expensive. And so I knew that I wasn't going to be able I didn't want to start investing here. The barrier to entry was pretty high. And so I read the book. I took a trip to Tennessee, and because I have some friends out there that they're involved in real estate, and I trust them, and so did a tour with them of what they do. One of them's a real estate agent. One of them flips and fixes homes, and that was a very good experience. My goal was to come back not discouraged, right? Like oh, this is too much for me, but I came back very encouraged, and I think it was important to seek out other people that had experience with this. And pretty soon after, we bought our first duplex, and then a month later our second duplex, and then that kind of started the ball rolling, right? The goal was to do one, the idea of your learning property, just to kind of kick the dust off the tires and start making those connections with people, and it was a low risk property, and it's done well for us. The cash flows well. I to this day haven't seen the unit. I've never driven out to Tennessee because it makes a small profit. We make, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000 a year in about $2,200 a year in cash flow. So if I take a flight out there, all the expenses, it'll eat into that profit. But we have very solid property managers. We stay in contact with them constantly. Any tenant issues that arise, they're dealt with swiftly. And so I've had some family members that are in the area go by and take a look. So we have people that are able to confirm that things are going well. But yeah, I was doing one and then the other, and that just kept churning the wheel. And we're on our way, right? We're off to the races with that.
Yeah, so that leads me to the next question I would like to ask you. What are the biggest challenges of juggling a 9 to 5 and real estate, and how do you overcome them?
So for me, the biggest challenges, I had a few, right? One was because I was under contract at my job. My concern was, am I able to do something like this, right? Especially as I started posting stuff online, and you're building businesses, right? You have to treat multifamily as a business. It's not a hobby. It's not something that you do and you could like disconnect from. It's not the case. And so first was going through my contract. Second was meeting with my HR team, right? I didn't want to hide this, right? I enjoy my job. I want to be there. And so, I spoke with my boss and so we went through that, and it took some time to understand what that needed to look like, because now my LinkedIn profile was changing, my Instagram was now, has first gen foundation, all these things. And I was never really a social media guy, but I was doing stuff on LinkedIn, more in the style of leadership and, transformational leadership and just trying to help people around me. But now it turned very heavily into real estate. So I wanted to make sure the company was on board. And one thing that somebody told me, which I was encouraged by, was, they told me, you're probably a valuable employee to the company, and the company is not going to want you to leave. And right. So, that was an important distinction that helped me kind of settle into my shoes and say, okay, I've done well for this company. We've had a great relationship. This is not something that's in the same lane as them. I'm not pulling, dollars away from them or anything like that. I know that I will continue to give them good or even better service as I learned this, as I've started this entrepreneurial route. And so I was very clear about that. I do a lot of work on the end of the days, right? Before work or after work. Even today, I had taken the day off, right? I don't like to do work for first gen during work hours, and I know that the team appreciates that, and so I take very seriously both jobs, or both hats that I wear. And then I also think they recognize that as an entrepreneur, you're going to be able to bring different solutions to the table. I think that I've my team, my peers, my boss, they all have recognized that since I've done this, I have brought new things to the table that wouldn't otherwise happen, right? So I work in a big organization and things move really slow. But as an entrepreneur, you're learning new skills, right? You got to be very scrappy. You're trying to figure out how to do things, in the most inexpensive way possible. You're learning new technologies, and so working on the edges of time, right, of before and after. I respect the time that I have on my W-2. I don't take advantage or abuse it. And I think both hats, they feed each other. There are skills that I've learned in the corporate world that I surely have been able to bring into my multifamily business. I do a lot of conflict resolution at work, and there have been times where you're dealing with a property manager or dealing with different partners, and that has been helpful. And then as far as learning new systems, funnel theory, which is something that I was not aware of, in my W-2, and that's something that I've learned, as an entrepreneur, as a multifamily operator. And so that has been able to help out. So I always saw it. I knew that I wasn't going to bring nothing to the table, right? And then multifamily, when I got into my first indication, once I got my foot in the door, the goal was how do we add value to the team? And there are
Yeah.
skills. We've all been walking life. We've all learned skills. We've all bring something to the table. And it was okay. How do we help the team? And I think that that has helped us connect with new people, and new projects. And so
So let
I
me
think
ask you
it's
this.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Like yours was pretty straightforward. You were able to communicate this to your boss and to your team at your W-2, and everyone was kind of on board. And besides, you did not allow it to affect your W-2. I would like to say it just feels like you had to build a structure for this to work for you. Yes, that's what I hear from what you're saying. But what about for someone that is in a very, I would call it a toxic environment or a workplace, or it might not be toxic, it might just be a place that they do not like you having divided attention. And if they go to their boss and say, I want to start multifamily, or they go on LinkedIn and see a different profile and they're like, what are you doing? You're not marketing our business. You're not doing that. What exactly are you doing? Because I know some people can put any other thing apart from what their W-2 on LinkedIn to market what they do. They can't put that. So what would you say to people like that are in that kind of situation that don't have the opportunity that you have to create a structure with your boss and with the multifamily team and with everybody around you? What would you say to them?
Well, I think there's great opportunities to be a limited partner in multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
And BB, you and I work with a lot of limited partners and investors, and that's a way to get involved. You don't need to advertise a ton. I think that we forget that there are people that want to invest in real estate, and that's one thing, and it's a completely different thing to be a real estate investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the two are very far apart. And so if you need to have an online personality, if you're going to be raising capital, yeah, you're going to need to have that online personality. But as you're getting started, you don't need that. You're just, you're around the people that do that thing. You can work again on the edges of the day. I don't know, people have different structure. Some people have part-time jobs, and everybody doesn't need to know what's going on all the time in your life, right? We have certain freedoms there. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate because the company that I've been with, I have a long trajectory there, and the idea has been I have always responded well to the company, and so I think that's important. If you're in a toxic work environment, I think there's always an opportunity for you to look for something new, and then people get into multifamily because of that sometimes. But I would caution, it is not easy. It is not easy to make enough money to live off of in multifamily. BB, you've been doing this for a long time, and
Yeah.
how difficult it is. And for me, where I am now, I'm in a good spot where I have a good job. My business is moving. It's doing what we wanted it to do. And so, if you're in a toxic work environment, you're probably subestimating your value in the marketplace, and it's always easier to find a job while you have one. So that's probably a good time to look for one. And most people, their companies will work with them unless it's kind of in the same range, right? If you're a loan expert, they might not want you dealing with other companies to find loans, right? And I can understand it. But the reality is, there are a lot of people that I'm around, different GPs on projects. They don't do a lot online, and they do great, right? They have hundreds, if not thousands, of units, and as owners, whether through limited partnership or general partnerships or key principals. Some people do, note lending. I mean, there's a million ways to get involved in multifamily, and I think that we can be drawn in by the coolness of being online, but you don't necessarily have to. Most of my investors are people that I'm around. We certainly have investors that we've never met before, but it's always a great way to get started. And so I would encourage someone that does not have the ability to openly raise capital, or have things like that online. There are ways to get around that, and I always point to Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And the big shift for me after I read that book was the mindset shift was that I cannot to how can I. And so if you truly want to do it, there's a way to do it. And you just have to answer that question, really take some time, sit back, read a book, meditate, pray, and there's a way to get involved.
Yeah. Before we move to the next question, anyway, let me say the next question, then I will talk a little about it before I ask you to speak on it. What strategies help investors scale from keeping their W-2 income? I've been in quite a conversation with some W-2 people, and that is basically because of what you said. I've had some good friends that have good W-2 jobs, but maybe they feel like living leaving it and continuing full-time with multifamily because they feel that if they are in multifamily full-time, that they can get more equity, they can do more and all that. I've had this conversation with them when I try to say, please don't do it. Keep your WT until your multifamily is able to cover all your expenses and more, like even double what you're earning with your W2. And for that to happen, it takes time. It's not just one deal or two deals. Most time it takes multiple deals for that to happen because I've been in it and I see it. Because not all deals perform at the same level. Some deals today can be performing, does not mean that they'll continue performing the next year. Another deal might pick up and start performing well. Or sometimes you have a case where all of them are performing. So if you are not ready for that, you find yourself going back. And we've seen that happen. I'm sure you've seen that. You've seen people that actually left their W2 to come into this full time and they end up going back to their W2 after a while, after seeing the reality of life that this is not sustainable. And I can say it for a fact that if you don't have the heart for this, you shouldn't quit your W2. You can still have your W2 and do this. So I would like to know your perspective about how investors can scale, because it's difficult as well if you want to keep both, how they can scale while keeping their W2 income.
Yeah, so our trajectory was like I mentioned, we bought our first duplex, then a second, and this is the Middle Tennessee. And our goal was to try to do something different with every deal. Then we went into a 6-unit, then a single family, then another duplex and triplex, and each one had like a different, each deal is different, right? So we used different lenders. We wanted to try what it was to bring an investor on a deal as a GP. We wanted to figure out, what if it's how would it happen if we did it by ourselves? All these things. And then we shifted into the syndication space. So the syndication space for me is very intriguing because of the team, right? We were now going to be with a group of people that we all raised capital, right? We came in as co-GPs, we all raised capital. We went to this deal, now we're operating the deal. And then I would say the best lesson I learned there was make sure you know who you're getting into the deal with, right? Partnerships are difficult. People have different strategies on things. And in the first one, again, this was a while ago, but part of my job ended up being dealing with a very difficult partner, and I ended up having to be the go-between. And this was a deal that we did in 2022, 2021, and so that was tough because this person was very toxic, and we ended up having to get him out of the deal. And so that part was something I wasn't expecting, but it was something that gave the team massive value, and so. That helped solidify a bunch of relationships. And I was still the new guy in that group when it came to multifamily. But it ended up just teaching me a lot. And so that put a big whoa, this is not all fun and games. 2022 was not a great year for multifamily. We're coming out of a dip in multifamily. And, if you cannot sustain those dips, I would highly recommend that you do not jump into it full time. I know that I could do better than I'm doing now, better in the sense of getting more units, but I've made the decision hey, I know that I can't double what I'm doing now, even if I got another, 10 or $15 million of raise to go, to go buy more properties and that. But what I have gained in the last few years is a network of pretty phenomenal partners. So if I said, I have money, now I know a BB, I know different operators that I can now LP with or GP and know that they're gonna help take care of my money. But the reality is, I follow the same mantra that you do. If I get to a place where my passive income is paying all my expenses, I would consider. But I'm not there. And again, I happen to enjoy my W2. I'll be there as long as I'll have me. And I know most people are not in that boat. But the reality is, I have seen a lot of very smart people leave their W2s and come back. Or now you're kind of in a bad space because you left, and then now you have to take a job where you're making less, or you don't have all the experience or all the goodwill that you've been building up over the years. And so it's tough, right? I know that there are very scary days between the time they left first and the time they had to go back and get another W2 or going back to that same W2. So I don't think it's a decision that should be taken lightly, and I wouldn't do that for the foreseeable future.
Yes, I would say that clearly because I mean there are periods where no income comes in. How are you going to navigate that? There are periods where a lot of income come in, it's like a boom. You just see it coming in. So you just have to have the heart not to be able to say this is your one and only source of income. I will encourage you, if you're new in the multifamily space, please take your time. Don't jump into it and leave your W2. Even the very experienced ones are also doing the same thing. They're not just leaving their W2. Like I said in the last two episodes, we're talking about your goal, mapping out your multifamily goal. The moment you're able to map out your multifamily goal, that gives you a direction on how and when to stop your W-2, because you will know the freedom number that needs you to get to that finish line. You will know when you've gotten it because it's clear. You will know if it's, let's say, you want 15 million, 20 million as something that's like your retirement or something that you know that can produce that money. If you know that is your freedom amount, the moment you get there, it's very easy for you to identify. But when there is no goal, no picture, no idea, no roadmap of where you want to go, it's kind of difficult for you to navigate when to leave your W-2 and when not to leave it. So I would say the first thing first is for you to make a map of what financial freedom looks for you and take a walk back and start planning it that way so that you don't get yourself into unnecessary issues. Now we're going to go into maximizing passive income, because this leads to the ability for you to maximize your passive income, because if you're able to increase that, the tendency for you to leave your W-2 will be very high. Yeah, so my question to you on this is, how does passive income play a role in funding your multifamily investment? Can you talk a little more about it?
Yeah. So I
And
think,
consider that the cash on cash most times is about 1,000 plus 2,000, depending on the amount you've invested. So how do you think that can literally fund your passive your multifamily investment?
yeah. So what I do is any passive income that I get, I have a separate account for, right? And so that and the account is called real estate gains. And all I do is that money goes in there. I don't touch it. And when
Nice.
I get to a number, I reinvest it, right? Like I'm not spending that money. And I'm sure that the people are familiar with the hockey stick growth, right? So it takes time. Like it starts growing and then you hit an inflection point, right? But the idea is that you should be focused on reinvesting. I don't know if everyone's familiar. If not, you look up the rule of 72, and the idea is, what if you keep your money in the market, how long does it take to double? And the earlier you get into real estate, if you're at 10% returns consistent, you can double your returns in 72 months. If you find investments that'll give you 20%, that gets cut in half. When you're doing something in a bank account that gives you, 1%, it takes you dozens of years to double your income. And so you should be investing, you should be saving. And there's even a time where you get to where you need to stop saving and invest more. If you have your 3, 6, 12 months, whatever your goal is, to Bibi's point, you should have these metrics in mind and these goals. If you have 6 months of savings for rainy day fund and your W-2 is pretty steady, you probably should start investing that money, putting it somewhere where it gives you better returns. Risk aversion, risk reward. So for me, I started a few years ago a life insurance policy, a permanent life insurance policy, and now I'm able to start lending to myself. So if I have a need for my businesses or for my rental property, I can write a note to myself, and that's increasing, and the risk is low. It's a low risk. It's not an investment, but it's just a low risk place for me to increase my money also. So diversification is important. I think that we like to niche down, and I think it's important to know what you're doing. So that's why we don't buy the duplex anymore, right? We've learned from that, and we know that the syndications, the spread of risk is greater, where we have 180 units, and we have 10 or 15 vacancies. We're at like 95%. Right now, if I have a duplex and one person leaves, I'm at 50% occupancy. And so also when you're building that out, making sure that you don't lie to yourself and give yourself fake income. If you're not putting away money on your smaller properties for your vacancies and for your maintenance and your capex, you're lying to yourself. I could easily say, oh, I'm making $6,000-7,000 off of a duplex a year, but no. Again, we have an issue. There's money in the bank. It doesn't shake us, because we're doing this methodically. And so when Bibi talks about your freedom number, there's a saying, I think it was from Yogi Berra, who's a baseball player. I had a bunch of sayings. He says, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. You have to know where you're going. You have to know where you're going. And so passive income is important. But if you want to grow this portfolio to a place that you can leave a W-2, you just need to be reinvesting it. You should not, buy the new handbag or buy the new car or take with that money. I mean, you have to budget your fund, but the reality is the more that you could stay in the market, with solid investments and good returns, the faster it'll get there.
I'm happy about the direction that you took this conversation to, because it's very important that you kind of save up whatever it is you're getting and reinvest it. And that's the truth, because every 50,000 that you bring in as a limited partner to invest in a deal is kind of locked in for the next 3 to 10 years. Really, you will not get it back. So you need something that will be fueling it. And remember, one deal might not do the magic. one deal will not help you replace your W-2. So you need to keep investing. And the beautiful thing about multifamily and some other passive investment is about compound interest. You can actually use 150,000 to generate more income to invest in another deal and all that. So it's a very beautiful response and direction that you took this conversation to. My next question to you is, you've answered the second one, so I just need to go. So can someone truly replace their paycheck with passive income while keeping their 9 to 5? So let me explain the type of passive income I'm talking about. We know that on our deals we give out to investors every quarter, either preferred returns or profit, which is cash flow, cash on cash. And most times, depending on the amount that they invest, if it's a 7% preferred returns and they invested 50,000, they will literally get about 80 something dollar for just a 50,000 investment. And for $100, they will get like 1,725 thereabout for that kind of investment. Can someone truly replace their paycheck with that kind of money when you're getting it every quarter? Or are there other strategies through multifamily that someone can make a lot of money to replace their W-2 income?
Yeah, so I believe so, right? Even for myself, I have not yet replaced my W-2 income, but I have added to it. So it does two things. It allows me to invest more, right? Into these projects. So so you want to focus on cash flow. If the idea is to replace the W-2 with passive income, you want to work on places that have good cash flow, but be careful because a lot of the places that give you the most cash flow are in the most dangerous places and your risk is much higher. So when you're getting a cash on cash of 12, 15, 16%, typically, it's not always, but typically those are places that you don't want to be in past 8 o'clock at night. And so there's a couple of things. The reason that we don't invest in places like that is because I don't want to put people in danger, right? If I have a property manager and a pipe breaks and they got to go out there at midnight, I don't want to send them in an area that they're going to get hurt. And so, I stay away from that. But those are typically where you're going to get your highest cash on cash. And if you do simple math, if you say, I have invested $1 million and I am now getting 10% cash on cash, I'm making $100,000 a year. So yes, I mean, I know most people can live off of $100,000 a year. I think if you cannot live off $100,000 a year, you have a different lifestyle. But I know most people and many people that would be even more than they make now. And so can it happen? Yes. And this is where the W-2 comes in. How do you get that first million? Right. And so it's working. It's being smart. It's living like no one does today, so you can live like no one does tomorrow. And so when you start this, the sooner you start this, right? I have nieces and nephews, and some of them are really focused on the investing, and I tell them like, hey, if you get started now when you're 18, 19, by the time you're 40, you're like you could be retired at 40 because you have 20 years of investing. And I had them in mind when I started investing because my family came here from Colombia 50 years, 60 years ago, and they laid a foundation for us. Our company's name is Fresh Air Foundations, right? Why? They laid a foundation. All we're doing is we're building on top of that, and so we're laying a foundation for the next generation. So as I'm walking my nieces and my now adult nieces and nephews into this, they're having they don't have debt, they have thousands of dollars in the bank, ready to go, and and they don't have phenomenal jobs. They still have the job that a 19-year-old has, but they've been smart with their money because their parents have taken the time to learn from what our parents did, which they didn't know. They didn't know about investing. They didn't know about that stuff. They were worried about putting food on the table and giving us a safe space to grow into this country. And so I think that the ability to do that is so important. And yes, you can get there. The earlier you start, the better. Time is your best friend in investing. So start as early as you can, and you start building up that hockey stick growth. And I tell people there are ways where you don't have to be smart. You just have to be disciplined.
Sure.
Just be disciplined. If you're able to dollar cost average, I'm not a huge fan of the stock market, but my company gives me a benefit where they match a percentage of my dollar. So I put that. I'm getting 100% return on that. I'm $1, I'm getting another dollar. And I let that go. I have, I've invested in multifamily. There's debt funds that you can invest in. There's any number of things. And so, like I mentioned, the infinite returns with an IUL with a permanent insurance policy. And so, taxes, learning how to understand the way the taxes feed, your returns, and and truly how to get a good tax return and put that to work in multifamily. There are ways to do this. Self-directed IRAs. People don't know about that. Bibi, I know you're helping educate people on that. That's huge. I had an investor that was ready to send me $100,000, and I had to stop him because he was going to pull it out at 10 o'clock at night. I said, no, stop. He was going to pull it out of his 401k. I said, let's get you through a self-directed IRA. He literally saved $10,000 or $20,000 of a tax hit that he would have taken. So there's education, and there's you just have to be methodical with the thing that you're doing. Don't go crazy, and don't ever feel like you need to be pressured into getting into an investment. If you don't understand it, you should not be investing.
Sure. Thank you. I just like your response. And I like what you said about being disciplined. You don't have to be smart, but being disciplined. And that has really helped me throughout my multifamily journey. Like the lifestyle, there's a lifestyle that you might want to live because you're seeing the money come in. It's about you saying, do I want to have this lifestyle, or do I want to save and get my financial freedom within a short period of time? I've had cases where I had to think and say, this money is here. I'd rather use it. I remember when my business partner wanted to buy he wanted to buy a Rolls Royce. He actually had the money, I saved up for it, and I was a slumbering block because I could not fathom how you can have this kind of money. And I know about real estate, and I know how that can transform into 10 times that money over a period of time. But a Rolls Royce will not give you that money. I stood my ground and said, you will not buy this car. You would not. Rather, we took that money and we bought 2 properties in Tallahassee in Florida. Those were our first 2 vacation rental, and we made a lot of money. In 2 years, just from the rental, we made almost 300,000 just from those 2 properties. And we sold it, and we had about another extra, maybe 80,000 on each. Just a short period of time. We gained more than that money on those 2 properties. And so it was worth it. So, like you said, discipline is very, very important. You need to weigh your options. Do I $1,000 plus or 2,000 that BB is giving to me and go and buy a bag, or go buy a wig, or go buy something? You need to just wait. But that does not say that you should not also take care of yourself. You're actually working. You should also think of having some passion for yourself and reinvesting the rest. So for you to use passive income to replace your paycheck, is it possible? Just like what Brian said, it is possible, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's about timing, and it's also about your consistency and your discipline. With that can transform into financial freedom. You need quite a number of multifamily to break through. I've seen many investors that just want to invest in one deal, and they feel that one deal is all that. No, you might need to invest in so many more deals for you to get to your goal. And that's what I just want the viewers out there to know, that one deal might not cut it, but one deal can cut it. I've seen some people that say, just want this deal transformed my life. You can be that lucky you get one deal that will transform your life. But if you can't get that one deal, which is very difficult, you have to have multiple deals that will transform your life. I have one more question for you before we go into the next stage. Time management and delegation, because with what you said, you have a lot of time. I know sometimes I try to reach out to you and you are off the radar, and I know you're working. And then sometimes I just dial your number, you pick up, I know, okay, it's doing multifamily at this time. What system or tool do you use to streamline your investing process? How do you get to do that to manage your time, looking at the fact that you have a W-2?
So I will answer. For me, the thing that I had to as we started scaling, the thing that I feel like it took us too long to do was bookkeeping. That's not something that I want to do. Right, like that. I tried to do it for the first few months, year, and it's just because you have to be so focused while you're doing it. And there's transactions coming in. We're not working in retail. There's not thousands of transactions, but pretty quickly you get a month or 2 away from that expense. You're like, what was that about again? And so, we outsource bookkeeping. I have a business partner. When you mentioned, doing this with your family, my business partner is my brother. And so he's less forward facing than I am, but he's involved in everything that I do. Right. So, he's aware of the properties. He understands what's going on with them. He manages the smaller properties. So I'm more passive in those, right? The duplexes, the six, stuff like that. I deal with the syndications. And so, but he deals with all the back end, taxes and whatnot. So as far as delegation, for me, bookkeeping is, that's something that I knew very quickly. I was like, I'm not going to do this well. I also outsource, we have a part-time employee who manages, our websites and all the technical stuff that it's not that I can't do it, but I have a W-2 that I have to focus on also. So she helps us out a lot, with our website, publishing articles, doing stuff on Instagram or LinkedIn. So that's the delegation part. So I like to time block. So on a Saturday morning, I will spend a few hours doing, whether it's, sending out investor letters or writing content for our part-time employee to now translate into Instagram or LinkedIn or what have you. And then I do work on the edges of the day. So before I get into work, I've been bad. I haven't been feeling great, but so I haven't been as active on LinkedIn for the last week or so. But
I
typically,
noticed.
yeah, yeah,
I
I
noticed
will, I
because you're
will,
so active.
yeah, I will either write my LinkedIn post in the morning, but I typically like to just write that on the weekend. So I'll write the 5 articles on a Saturday, and then I can schedule them. I was using Go High Level for that, but I think that the algorithm doesn't like when you use a third party software. But I time block. So there's a guy named Brandon Turner in the multifamily space. He's someone that I watch what he did. He has a saying. He says, "I take every day and I do one thing to make my portfolio better." He's like, sometimes that's just printing a document, and that's all I did that day for my multifamily portfolio. Sometimes the next day it's going to the printer and picking up that sheet and reading it. But I always do one thing every day to make it better. And so I genuinely believe that the day is longer than most people give it credit for, right? Everyone think
Right.
like I don't have I my job is not 9 to 5. Like my job is very demanding. I work 24 hours a day. When in media, I work with news, and so if something happens on Saturday at 4 in the morning, I am
You're
working on
there.
Saturday at 4 in the morning. If it happens on Tuesday at 7 o'clock in the evening, that's when my day just gets extended. And so I don't accept when someone tells me I just don't have the time. It might not be the priority for you, and that's fine. But let's be real, right? I don't know what the coolest show on Netflix is. I love sports. I don't get to watch as much sports as I used to
Right.
because I have this focus, right? This is the thing that I'm doing for my family, for the future generations around me, for other people. I'm glad that I'm able to help instruct people on their multifamily portfolios and trying to help them out. So if you focus, you will find the time. I mean, we waste a ton of time in this country, right? There's a 9 to 5. Whenever I get out at 5 o'clock, I feel like I have another day in front of me, and so I can really just suck as much as I can out of the day, and I go to sleep, and I'm fine because I know that there's enough time to do more than one thing.
I think 9 to 5 even brings in structure because you're working between 9 to 5. But people like us that are full time into this, we literally work like round the clock. And that's what people don't understand. It's like we do a lot. But the only thing is we have the flexibility to move it around. This can take care, this can take care. I think the system that worked for me is to understand that I'm just one person, I'm not two people. And the moment I got to understand that, I started onboarding things for myself. I started engaging, although you might need to exchange that with money for people to help you do your bookkeeping, like you said, because I was handling our bookkeeping. I'm very good at it, but it's a nightmare when you have to do multiple properties. It's like you don't even want to do it. I did it for 4 years before I had to outsource it to someone else because it was becoming too much a big issue as we were expanding. So I think for you to scale in the multifamily, you need to create a system, just like what Brian just told us. He has created a system for himself. For me, I've created a system whereby I involve people that can help me do the things that I can take off from my plate and do the things that maybe they can't handle. I will concentrate on that at the same time. One thing I love about what you spoke about is discipline. Discipline is a big factor in the entire thing that we've been talking about. The moment we're able to discipline ourselves and have a plan, everything that we just mentioned here is very possible. You can gain wealth, serious wealth. Sometimes when I look at the money that come in from our multifamily investment, I'm like, nice. That is the expression on my face. But sometimes I look at it, I'll say, nothing. Why? So that's the drama you have to play with. So multifamily is a very good thing, and it's not just one deal, it's a consistent thing. So Brian, thank you so much for taking out the time. I know you're not feeling so fine, but you took out the time to have this conversation. I think this conversation is one of the conversations I've had to have because if you notice, I didn't really interject. Most times I normally like to interject and add things and ask questions, but on this particular one, I had to listen to you because I wanted to understand things from your perspective, from a W2 person doing multifamily perspective. And you really, really dished out a lot of important information that people can work on if they have their W2. So like he said, you don't have to be active to invest in multifamily. You can be passive and still be wealthy by doing multifamily, being passive. Brian, do you have any last word for people to go on with? And also, I know your information is there, but if you like to still say it on how people can reach you, I would like you to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank you, Bibi. Anything for you. I was not feeling
Thank
well,
you
but
so much.
I can't leave you hanging. You've done so much for our company and for so many people. So I appreciate you.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having me
much.
on. Anyone that wants to reach out to us, we're at firstgenfoundations.com. on Instagram at First Gen Foundations. My email is brian@firstgenfoundations.com. I love talking about real estate. I love talking about investing. I love educating people. And so if anyone wants to reach out just to have a conversation, but I'm happy to add value to people as much as I can.
Thank you so much. And I know, audience, you enjoyed it. And if you've not joined my YouTube channel, this is the right time for you to do. We are discussing different things on the YouTube right now, our due diligence process. You really want to know, regardless of the fact that you are a limited partner, you need to be sure that whoever you're investing in or with is doing a thorough due diligence. And there's no better way for you to know what to ask or things to be aware of than for you to watch our video. Really, we are very thorough with our due diligence, and that's why we decided to put it out there for you to know the type of activities that go on behind the curtain and why we can say yes to a deal or why we can walk out from a deal. I've walked out from so many deals and I've walked into few deals. We've also spoken about Social Security. Some of you are investing or some of you are putting aside part of your paycheck for Social Security, but you really don't know the implication of what that is or what it translates to or who is managing it, how it is, because there's something that they're saying that by 2032, there might not be any Social Security for anybody to run into. Will that happen? We don't know, but right now that is the analysis that is going on. So are you going to fold your hands and watch that happen to you? You need to start taking strategic steps, and that's the conversation that we'll be discussing on YouTube, and it's going to be there. We'll also be discussing recession. There is a sense in the economy that we might be in a recession. Some people feel that we're in a recession. Some people feel that we are not in a recession. So what is it? It's up to you to decide if we're in a recession. So those conversations will be on our YouTube, and the YouTube is Bibi Ofiri, and on our Facebook is also Bibi Ofiri. Thank you all for taking out the time to be with us, and thank you, Brian. I cannot appreciate you. I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.